Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Toronto Spirit Society. It's great to have full house of incarnate spirits, but there are many, many more discarnated with us. And also those watching us through YouTube and Facebook, welcome. It's great to have you with us. Today is a special day for two reasons. One is our Lunch and Learn, and those who came here in person already felt the smell of the delicious lunch that we are going to have, and I hope you guys can stay and join us for lunch and help the TSS. We ask for donation to help us with the expenses over here, but that is the food for the body. Most importantly, we all come here to feed our souls, our hearts. And today it's a special day because we will talk about someone who really resembled Christ for us in his daily life and came to really develop the Spiritist doctrine on top of Allan Kardec's work. We talk about Chico Xavier. And Tiago will talk to us about his life, Chico Xavier's life, in his work. But before we get into the lecture, we will have initial prayer with our dear friend Miguel, and I need a volunteer for a prayer. Actually, Miguel will do the reading, and I forgot if someone waiting for us, so Teresa will do the prayer for us. Before we get into the initial reading, I would like to remind everyone to participate with your comments and questions. Our digital medium, this is not a kind of mediumship that is not, it's on the medium's book. It's a new mediumship of the 21st century. So our digital medium Carlos is there on chat. So if you have comments or questions, you can chat and you'll see he's going to reply. So Miguel, please. Yeah, do the reading. Teresa will do the prayer for us.
Alright, so we're gonna do a small reading about Happy Life by Divaldo Pereira Franco and Joanna de Angelis. And do not trade tomorrow's peace of mind for today's corrupting pleasure. What is not moral can never provide harmony, fugitive and voracious. It passes away rapidly, leaving the ashes of dissatisfaction burning the body and the shadow of remorse in the wounded conscience. It is better to remain thirsty than to be sorry. What you have not experienced will not torment you, and what you need now will sooner or later arrive in good order for your satisfaction. Thank you.
So let us all now close our eyes, open our hearts and our minds, and connect ourselves to God, our Creator, to Jesus, our Master, and the good spirits here present today. And let this light shine stronger inside of us, helping us to absorb the lessons that we're going to be learning today. And let's thank God for the opportunity of being here all together, learning a little bit more of the gospel that Jesus brought to us. We also would like to ask the good spirits here present to enlighten and give good intuitions to our brother Tiago, so he can help us to learn a little bit more, so we can live here today with the gospel of Christ a little bit stronger inside of our hearts. And so be it. Tiago, it's all yours.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, such a full house. When I sit down, there are half of you here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's very good to be here. It smells incredibly good, doesn't it? Like, I feel awesome. I will confess to you that the title of this lecture, Chico Xavier, Life and Works. That's what I call false advertising. I am not here to talk about Chico Xavier, Life and Works. And I will tell you why. I didn't know where to start, and I knew I could not stop. Simple as that. Someone that lived 92 years old, that did what he did, and we are trying to understand what he gave to us. We are still trying to understand the meaning of a lot what has been written through his hands. Many people are trying to grasp the amount of goodness that can fit in one person. I try to do that, and it's still difficult. Still, it was a person that was so humble that probably if he was here listening to me saying that, he would just like put his head down and shake his head and say, "What are you talking about? You're not talking about me." And those reflections are important because made me have a lot of difficulty on what to bring to you in 40 minutes about this person and about his legacy and about what he has given to us and somehow still giving, because every time that we read one of the books that were given through his hand, he is still teaching us somehow. That's my feeling. So instead of trying to bring numbers, instead of trying to bring slideshows, I will just tell a story about this boy. Because while I was reading, I came across the life of this boy. This boy that was called Francisco. He was a little boy, and he was one among 9. So then you imagine this big house in a tiny little town in Brazil that today has 40,000 people. So for who knows Brazil, 40,000 people, it's really not that much. I live in a town that is 50,000 people, and I consider it pretty small. 10,000 less people, probably I would see everyone going to work, you know, the people would pass to me, I would see them. So it was a very small town in a rural area, only starting to grow after some industrialization. There were some factories that were being put around there. And this is important because somehow this boy ended up working in one of those factories for a while. And his name was Francisco, right? The boy Francisco was born in April 2nd, so just in the beginning of the week. So he was born April 2nd in 1910. And he was given this name, Francisco de Paula Cândido. That was his name. And it's curious because he was given this name because April 2nd is the anniversary of death of a saint in the Catholic Church, Saint Francis of Paola. Therefore, his name became Francisco de Paula Cândido. That is a curiosity about this little boy. He was 5 years old, and his mother was very sick. And she knew somehow that she was not going to be around for too long. So she made a very, very hard she took a very hard decision. She got Francisco and the other siblings, and she gave them away to relatives and friends and people that she knew, because she knew that she could not take care of them, and probably because it would be very hard also for their father to take care of them. He would work as well, and he would be the only one, so taking care of 9 would not be easy, right? For you guys that somehow take care for 1 hour of the folks here and there, probably it is a challenge sometimes, everyone together speaking and questioning. Imagine all of them every day together, right? Those 9 folks. So then she started to give them away. Of course, that he loved her very, very much. And his love for her was such that he also helped a lot in his future work that he did for us during his life. He asked his mother, right? Why are you doing that? You don't like us anymore? What? He didn't understand exactly the seriousness of the situation, but she said, don't you worry. Everything will be fine. You will be with someone that will care for you, and I will need to go away for a treatment, but I will come back. And after she said that, and after he went to his godmother. Her name was Rita. One day after she told him that, she passed and she left to the spiritual world. She knew that was her time. Well, I think he conformed because he loved his mother very much, and he knew that probably she was doing the best. With 5 years old. And there he went to live with his godmother, called Rita. His godmother was a troubled woman, we can say. She had very serious nervous crisis. Today, probably we would say that she might have had some mental health issues. She needed help with that. But because of that, she became very aggressive. And there was Francisco, with around 5 years old, just losing his mother and going to live with a person that probably had difficulty taking care of him. But he never said one thing. And she sometimes would be verbally aggressive, and sometimes she would be physically aggressive to this boy. But he never said a thing. And there was one special thing that kept him going among many, among he himself being someone that had such a serenity and an understanding, even though sad, even though afraid. Another thing is, his mother did come back, and she will come to him, and he will see her, and he will talk to her, and then she will tell him, Francisco, I'm sorry that I cannot take care of you and your siblings now, but you gotta be patient. You gotta be patient with her. You gotta be a good boy. And she would talk to him. She would comfort him. And he obeyed. And then he was patient. And he respected. Even though he had all the reasons to be revolted. He had all the reasons to run away. He had all the reasons to want to go somewhere else. But he never did. In fact, some of the literature and the people who knew his story would say that he would say like that her temper was benevolent. He would say that his godmother was actually benevolent. And he would never say one bad thing about her. And here we sometimes, I keep thinking, right? We are home. We discuss because, the food was burned, it was late. The food was not on the table the time that we wanted. And we raise our voices to each other, we don't respect, we're not patient. And that is a 5-year-old boy being all of that somehow. Not to compare, but to look at and say, maybe that is possible. That's possible. And there is a phrase from him later on in life, and I believe motivated by a lot of what shaped him, to be who he is, he would say, I feel sad if someone offends me. I feel sad. And I think that is okay to be sad when something happens that we don't like. But he said, for sure I would feel worse if I was the offender. That to upset someone is something terrible, he would say. And imagine that simple and powerful statement that surely shaped by some of his most critical experiences in early life is also a lesson for us. From this boy that until then, and still for many years, no one knew about. He was just Francisco. One day, he was very sad, and he asked his mother, so, what, can you take me? Can you take me with you? She said, no, but I will send an angel to be with you and to take care of you, and everything will be okay. 2 years passed since he was given to his godmother, and since his mother had discarnated, and his father got married again. So the name of his father was João Cândido Xavier, and he got married with a woman called Cidália. So Mrs. Cidália and Mr. João Cândido not only get married, but then Cidália decides to bring everyone together again. All the 9, plus 6 that she already had with her. So there was João Cândido, Mrs. Cidália, and 15 young teenagers, kids, all together in one home. But there was, according to him, Francisco, the angel that would then take care of him. Not only that, but brought his family together again and allowed them to be a family again. Between 1920, so he was around 10 years old, until 1927, he could not talk to his mother anymore. She didn't come back to talk to him. She told him that she would need to go for some long travels, but then she would one day come back. There he was between 10 and 17. He finished what would be equivalent here to, I don't know, elementary school, 5th, 6th grade. It was the Brazilian elementary school. That's where he stopped studying. But he would go to school in the morning, and then at 3 o'clock he would go to this factory, and he would work there until 11 p.m. every day. Because, mother, father, stepmother, father, 15, they needed to work. They didn't have that privilege to simply go to school, go back home, but they needed to help to support the family. So then all of them somehow, contributed with the household maintenance. It was a huge family. In 1927 is a very important year for Francisco, because he was 17 years old and his sister, one of his sisters, fell ill. She was very, very sick. And he had friends, and there was a couple of friends. And it happened that this couple of friends was already Spiritist. And they used to have those weekly meetings. And the wife actually was a medium, as we understand in Spiritism. So she was able to communicate with the spirits. And they used to study the Spirit's book, the Gospel, the medium's book. And Francisco asked if they could take a look at his sister. In fact, they realized that his sister was suffering from obsession. And for us who are studying here, we understand that the obsession would be a very negative influence from spirits in our lives that can cause emotional disturbance, that can cause physical disturbances. And imagine in 1927, what was easier to think, right? Or there was no cure for what she was going on, or her case was to put in an institution, but there they were, this very generous and benevolent couple, Francisco and his sister, and they start teaching her about the spiritual world, about Spiritism. They helped her with the passes that we know here, and she was healed. And that was a landmark for Francisco, because he looked at that and he understood that it was something very, very powerful, very, very important, and he was totally drawn to it. And then there were those books that they would study, and there were those things that they would say, and there was this attitude toward his sister that he was so concerned about, and they were able to help her. From that moment, then he decided to study, and he decided to participate in those meetings, and he decided to understand what was that saved his sister and made him feel so different. Because again, he talked to his mother. People thought that he was completely insane already as a kid. They were the ones that understood what he was going through as well. How can I talk to someone that no one else can see? But they understood, and they helped to explain to him. And that gave him also the consolation and some understanding that what was going on with him was not that he was insane. It was not that he needed psychiatrical help. He needed education to understand what was going on with him. And that was very, very significant for him. And from there, he in fact organized a group to study Spiritism. And from those meetings, it was interesting because from those meetings that he started practicing what became one of the most important points of identification about Chico Xavier. He started writing things that the spirits would dictate to him. And he would let his arm, and because he would feel his arm numb, and then suddenly his arm would move by itself. And there were writings coming out of it. And then he would listen to those spirits. In fact, he already was listening to them to the point that one day he was in school and he had an essay to be done. And then he saw this man beside him. And then he's looking again. Imagine in a classroom, he sees this man that no one else can see. And this man will say, "That's what you're going to write in that essay." And he is just, "I don't know what is, just write. We're going to tell you and you are going to write." And that became, in fact, his first honorary mention of something that he wrote. And he knew, and he told the teacher, but it was not me. He needed to say that several times throughout his life. It was not me. I didn't write that. I can't write that. I can't write that poetry. I can't write those. He says, they are telling me. Who are they, right? They are telling me what to write. It is not me. And it is very significant too. Right? How many times we see people taking credit for what is not theirs? And there we have this boy, very honest, and say, it was not me. So, the psychography, the ability to write with the aid of the spirits, convey the messages from the spiritual world through writing, that became one of the greatest, images of Chico Xavier started there. Another important mark in Chico Xavier's life. In fact, his name only changed for Francisco Cândido Xavier the way that we know after the publishing of the first book. That publishing happened in 1932, and the name of this book was called Parnaso de Além Túmulo, in Portuguese. I am sorry, don't ask me. I don't know how to translate this directly in English. But I sorry?
Something like poetry from...
Yeah, poetry from beyond the grave. Something like, thank you. That makes sense. And it is a collection of poetry, this book, signed by the most memorable names of literature and poetry of Brazil, Portugal. And he kept saying, that is not me. It is them. It is not me. But the mark that I want to point out with you, it is not 1932, but it is 1 year before. 1931. Back in the time, there was Chico Xavier going to work, going to church. His family was religious, going to the Catholic Church, participating actively. But people would mock him a lot. They would keep calling him insane. They would keep telling him that he needed to go to an institution. Even the people in his own parish, even the priest, who actually was someone more or less supportive in a way, but still not wanting him to go on with that about talking with spirits and listen to spirits and everything. So he would go after work, or he would go when he was feeling that, it was overwhelming, that feeling of being mocked. And sometimes he would go just simply to be by himself and to pray and to meditate to a pond. And they had a dam in his hometown. And he would go there. And there was that stream, and there was a tree where he would sit underneath. And he would be by himself. And he would pray and he would meditate. He had this habit, very, very much ingrained in him, to really keep communicating with that world that was always communicating with him as well. Until one day he was praying and he was obfuscated by a very bright cross. And then he started trying to make sense of it and look and focus in this bright light that looked like a cross. And then suddenly that took a different shape. A shape of a very tall, imposing man, dressed as a priest. And he looked, who are you? Who are you? So this man directly looks at him without saying anything else, but directly comes to him and say, "So you really want to work with mediumship?" That was the question. He said, "Yes, if the spirits don't abandon me, yes, I do." "You will not be alone," this man said. "But you will need to work. You need to study. You need to persevere doing good." Okay. He asked this man, "Do you think I can accept that?" And the man said, "Yeah, perfectly. As long as you respect 3 basic rules here." 1931. In a conversation with a bright, tall man that only he could see in that moment, this man comes to him and say, "I have 3 rules for you to do the work that you want to do." And what is the first rule? You're right. Discipline. Everyone knows that story, right? And that happened in 1931 beside the pond underneath a tree. So then we can put in context the simplicity of that landscape. How would that happen? And imagine the surprise, and imagine the emotion that this moment have for him. And what is the second rule, he asked? Not creative, right? And what about the third rule? Discipline. Of course, says the man. And Chico accepted. He said, "Yeah, okay." Right away, the first assignment came. After he accepted, okay. So, the one who would be then his mentor and the director of all his works from that day on, a spirit that 4 years prior, in one of those meetings with that couple that saved his sister, this spirit came to that meeting 4 years prior to that encounter. Chico Xavier didn't know that. But that woman, as a medium, sees this spirit beside Chico. And she said, "Are you with him?" "Yeah." "So, can I tell him?" "No, not yet. When the time comes, he will know. And when he knows, things are going to change." And they did. We know they did. So the mentor looks at him and says, "Okay, let's start." So the first commitment, 30 books. That's it. First assignment, 30 books. You accepted already. You cannot say no now. In fact, there is, stories about him. If I want to pull out of that agreement, the mentor said, "That's okay, but I will pull you out of incarnation. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. I would take you away from the incarnation. Has no meaning. Whoop, I pluck you out." He was a very obedient man. And no, that's okay. That's all good. That's all good. Maybe out of fear, who knows, And then he asked, 30 books? How am I going to get lucky to sponsor all of that? Is my father going to win the lottery or something like that? He said, no. To be lucky is to work with the faith in God. That is to be lucky, to have the faith, to work in something like this. And the books will arrive by unexpected means. That's what he says for the first time. So then, now we know that months after, already in the year 1932, after receiving several messages through those meetings that he would be part of and that he organized as well, and in fact, from those meetings and these study groups came to be a Spiritist center. Some of you, I think, visited there, right? Vera, you did, right? You went there. In Pedro Leopoldo, a city called Pedro Leopoldo. There still exists. And this book, the poetry from Beyond the Grave, came to light. After that, we can look from one book among a commitment of 30 we have available in many different languages 412 books written through his hands. And he says, it was not me. He didn't take 1 cent of the publication and the sales of those books. Everything still goes for social works, for kids, works of Spiritist centers that have social initiatives to help families to turn into more knowledge, to turn into more messages of hope for those who look for it when they go visit the Spiritist centers. When they go visit because they need some sort of help. In Brazil, we know that there is a lot of charitable work that is material work that we call, which is very important. Food, clothes for the expecting mothers, whatever they may need in the basics to help the baby that is to come. Not only 412 books published, but thousands and thousands and thousands of messages that were given through his hands, with one very important message, not only for those who received those letters, but for absolutely all of us. Death does exist, but not the dead. The dead are not dead. They are here. They are speaking to us. They are wanting to keep connected with us through Chico Xavier, and now through some other benevolent people. Those messages will come to people who are suffering because they thought that they lost someone that they loved forever. He said, no. And here's the proof. They are talking to you. They are telling you stories that only you and them know. They are calling you by nicknames that no one else knew about. And they are alive. And they are telling you, cry no more. In the middle of your suffering, try to find solace. Try to find the consolation and the joy that they are alive as you are. And you will meet again. And they are being taken care of. Because there is a world that continues and prevails in comparison with this one. There is a world that waits for all of us. And there are so many messages telling us as well, you want to go there? You want to do well there? We can help you today. How to do well here. in order to keep doing well. When you make this passage, when you cross that bridge that everyone will cross, but will not kill any one of us, we will be alive. And that message is a message of extreme, radical love from someone that was born poor, grew up poor, that got not 1 cent from all that is being done through his own hands, that slept an average of 3 hours a day. As he would say, I'm a happy person. I have my bed, I sleep, I have 1 good meal a day, and there are so many people that come here to talk to me. I'm a very fortunate person. I have my problems. The people come here see how I am. I have the spirits that tell me things and teach me a lot of things. I am a happy man. A man that did what he did out of love, waiting nothing in return. Nothing in return. And such a generous man didn't want to burden us, even in the day that he discarnated. Do you know why? Because he asked to die in a day when everyone was happy. And do you know which day was that? It was June 30, 2002. And in that day, the country of Brazil was one big party, because Brazil was world soccer champion. And that was the day that he decided, after eating ice cream, and he went to bed. And then he departed, leaving with us 412 books, thousands of messages to people that were consoled immensely by his benevolence, by his selflessness, from this person that gave entirely his life to make others happy, to warm other people's hearts, and to tell everyone that life prevails. But he never forgot to say, and that for me is incredible, because it is so easy for us to put people in such high regards, but the ones that really deserve this place are the ones removing themselves from it and making sure that the one that is to be regarded is up there. And he always said that he had no authority to say anything to anyone, that he had no knowledge. All the knowledge came from somewhere else, but mostly the love that he was trying. And I personally say that he was 100% successful. Here he is, just shaking his head to me, and what are you doing? What are you talking about? Because he used to say, the love is not mine. The love comes from Jesus. Jesus. He is the one who always loved us. Therefore, was he not to love? Because he had a direct call with Jesus, in my opinion. And he heard with his heart, with his soul, when Jesus told us, love each other. And Chico loved everyone, right? And he taught us in the best of his sublime humanity, that we are to love each other as well. So this man that I'm talking about, there was this boy that moves with the godmother at 5 years old, with 7 moves again, who went through all what he's went. I like to think that Chico Xavier was a man that liked coffee, that liked ice cream, a man that he was afraid of airplanes. He was an animal lover. He had his dog. He was in a home full of plants, who was simple, but who was beautiful. In national TV, he cried talking about his mother, already with 60, 70 years old. In the end of a show that became very famous, the name of the show is called Pinga Fogo, and he was part of it twice. And at the end of one of them, he cried because he said, I would like to share with you a prayer that I used to do with my mother when I was a kid. And in tears, he recites the Our Father in front of national TV. Still touched, decades after the departure of his mother, for the love that he had. Probably that helped him to be so sensitive to it that he helped so many mothers during his life, giving them consolation as well, especially when their sons and their daughters departed from this earth, and he came to them giving those messages that they were still alive. You know, he showed us that love that Jesus had for us through his own love that he had for us. His life and his work are going to be there, and they are there for us to explore, to know, to be curious about, to be enthusiastic about, to admire. Some of us can use as an example, and he will keep saying us, hey, the example is there. It is Jesus. Because of his humbleness made him be the great man that he was. And to summarize, in this poor way that I'm trying to do here, it is Chico Xavier himself in a TV interview, and I will just go quote unquote for you what he said in this interview. If we could put in a banner in front of every human gathering place, every residential set, every city, every village, metropolis, every great capital of human progress, if we could, if we had enough authority to do, that we would choose that phrase of our Lord Jesus Christ when he told us, love one another as I have loved you. Because it is not only to love one another, we can love one another without a spirit of payment, of no retribution, without a spirit of reward. It is the love with a spirit of sacrifice and renunciation. Because he who loves does not create problems. Those who love know how to live without asking anything from the beloved creature. This is the love that Jesus taught us. Thank you very much. Now, quickly to finish, I would like to end in a high note. That was a pun. It was not funny, but I found it funny. It is a song that was his favorite. And it is in Portuguese, but I think the melody is pretty beautiful. The sound is really beautiful. I would like to share with you because it has a lot to do with that spirit of simplicity. This is such a simple song, but it's a song that has a meaning. And in particular to me, it touches me because my mother sang that song to me when I was a kid. So I would like to share with you. passarinho me ensinou uma canção feliz. E quando solitário estou, mais triste do que triste sou, recordo que ele me ensinou nessa canção que diz: eu vivo a vida cantando ai lili, ai lili, ai lo. Por isso sempre contente estou. O que passou, passou. O mundo gira depressa e nessas voltas eu vou cantando a canção tão feliz que diz ai lili, ai lili, ai lo. Por isso sempre contente estou. Ai lili, ai lili, ai lo. Thank you.
Thank you for the gift at the end. Thanks, Tiago. I know we are on top of the hour, but before we wrap, any questions from anyone here or in the internet? Flavia has a question. Thank you, Flavia. Actually, I just want to say one thing. There is a movie about Chico Xavier, right? Chico Xavier. So we are always looking for movies, at least at home. And we go for those adventure movies or wars and sci-fi. Just saying, for those who are trying to pick a movie today, Sunday afternoon with the kids or with your partner, look for the movie, because Chico's story is marvelous, and the work he left to us, which is actually after he passed, they have been still collecting written work that he left. It's already beyond 500 books, right?
And also there are a couple of documentaries.
Yeah, that's right.
National and international about the
Oceano.
And the letters that he wrote. There is a documentary that is in History Channel about the letters that he wrote. The other one, there's the Mothers of Chico Xavier. Mothers of Chico Xavier, that is testimonies of the mothers that received messages, and those messages are helping them today still to cope with the departure of their sons and daughters.
And Chico did so many for people, and he did it quietly, right? Following what Jesus said, make sure your left hand doesn't know what your right hand do. He has done so much, and there's so many stories that we could spend days here talking about him. And he has been victim of persecution even by Spiritists like us. People who insisted to make him smaller than he is. Which is pretty sad. But that's what human beings like us, imperfect beings, unfortunately do. And of course, the spirits who are enlightened, they never put themselves in a position of superiority. Like Jesus did coming to us, saving the right proportions, don't get me wrong. But Chico did the same. She put himself in the least of the least positions. He never took credit for anything, but he was, and he is, what we all hope to be one day. So we encourage you to get to know more about Chico, come to our studies, and that will certainly help us in our personal journeys, in our personal struggles. So I would like to say thank you for being here with us. Thank you, Tiago, for the lecture. Thanks for those watching us at home through Facebook and YouTube. If you want to get to know when we are live with lectures or study groups, just click on the little chime at the bottom. You get notifications. Thanks, Carlos. We are going to wrap now for the passes. I would like you to all to remain. The kids will remain there for the passes because we don't have enough space. So have a great week, everyone. Thank you, brother.